Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. We're happy to have you this evening. And, well, we really don't have a guest because he's normally our panelist, but Jordan McLeod will be our guest tonight. We're putting him in the guest chair, and Jordan works at the Southeast Regional Climate Center. And he was able to put together a look back at 2020. I know 2020 has been a crazy year for everybody, so I think we're going to wipe our hands of 2020 after tonight and throw it away. And we're going to kind of go over some of the weather details. And once you listen to this presentation, I think you're going to be amazed at all the activity that happened here in the Carolinas over the last year. So, Jordan, I know you've been working hard to prepare this document, and we're excited to see your information tonight. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about the Southeast Regional Climate Center and kind of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scotty. Yeah, so I'm an employee at the Southeast Regional Climate Center. It's located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's been there for, let's see, over a decade now, I believe, since moving in from Columbia, South Carolina. It's one of 6 regional climate centers across the country, and they're funded by NOAA, specifically under the NCEI, National Centers for Environmental Information. They oversee the regional climate centers and their activities. We specialize in all types of climate data, and we take that data and try to provide meaningful, tailored information based off of that. So we participate and directly produce monthly, seasonal, and annual reports. And the annual report is what we'll be talking about mostly tonight. And we also specialize in tool development. So we have a lot of really interesting climate-related tools in production. One of them, which is Climate Perspectives, which I'll demo that a little bit tonight as I'm talking. And finally, we do a little bit of research as well on the side, mostly applied research to different sorts of health outcomes and other types of research there. So that's kind of a broad overview of what we do at the CERC, as we call it.
Well, you guys definitely have your hands full. I know. Speaking of the Southeast, kind of tell us I know you cover North and South Carolina, but what's the other states you guys cover?
So we extend all the way from basically Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and also Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We can't forget about them in the Caribbean.
So are you going to be signing up if there's a satellite office in Dominican Republic or the Virgin Islands? Are you going there, Jordan? Because that sounds like a good place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. San Juan this time of the year sounds pretty nice compared to what we're getting, but no, it's not too bad.
I mean, anytime I can see the ocean, it's about 80 degrees. It's perfect for me. So
that's right.
All right, well, let's get on with our conversation. Frank, I know you have some temperatures you want to kind of talk about.
Right. Well, I've heard that we've seen a lot of above average temperatures across the Carolinas. That seemed especially true for parts of the fall here. So I'll let you give us the details on that. And if you could break it down by season, I think that would be an interesting way to look at it.
Absolutely. So let me share my screen if I'm able to do that. So this is our Climate Perspectives tool at CERC.com, which is, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end, how to reach our website and all, but this is one of our most popular tools that was developed. And it's just a way to kind of get a glimpse of what recent historical climate conditions have been across the Southeast, whether it's temperature or precipitation. Those are the only 2 variables right now that we have, but they're hope maybe in the future there's plans to expand that. So this is a way just to kind of get a sense of where we stood last year. So from January 1st to December 31st, these were the mean temperature rankings across the Southeast for the region. And just kind of zooming in on the Carolinas a little bit, you can see that there were, pretty significant rankings for most of the states. Asheville came in at 2nd warmest. Raleigh-Durham tied for 5th warmest. As you approach the coast, that's where the more extreme heat really took place. You see there, Cape Hatteras actually recorded their warmest year on record. Charleston came in tied at 3rd. Wilmington came in at third. So there were quite a few substantial anomalies in terms of temperature across the Carolinas. And what really drove this, as I kind of dug into the data a little bit deeper, is daily minimum temperatures were really off the charts for the region, particularly in the Carolinas as well. So I'll switch over to looking at, if we want to look at just the average minimum temperatures, you see the rankings are even higher. If that's, given that that's even possible, it's hard to believe, but you see Asheville there at number one, a lot of ones across the Carolinas, including Cape Hatteras as well. If I scroll over there. So we had a lot of days in which the persistent cloud cover and tropical moisture were streaming up into the region. And so this really drove having nighttime minimum temperatures that were suppressed across the region. So they weren't, we weren't able to get as much radiational cooling because of the cloud cover. And so, this drove the minimum temperatures to be much higher than we would expect.
Jordan, quick question here. Looking at all this data, how far back does this data go? I mean, I'm assuming some of these stations might be older than others for the entire region, but we have ones and twos. But how far back are we talking? Are we talking 60 years, 80 years?
So that's a great question. So the minimum threshold for a station to be included in climate perspectives is 20 years of data. But a lot of the stations can be, I think, like for example, Hatteras, you see, if you click on it, it tells you the number of years period for each station. So Hatteras actually has 125 years of, worth of data for that station. So it just depends on a station by station basis, but 20 years is kind of the cutoff for stations that are included. Yeah.
So a higher rank for a station with that much historical data is pretty significant.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really, and I think Asheville's one of the longest periods. Yeah, 126 years at Asheville. So yeah, those having number one rankings with that many years of data is an extreme anomaly for sure.
Well, then Jordan, I'll hop in with the precipitation questions because I know we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do.
It was a busy year. There's records that almost fell. There's records that did fall. So can you we'll start with the general synopsis, an overview, I guess, of precipitation patterns in 2020 in the Carolinas and in the Southeast.
Sounds good. So I'll start with, I think this image really captures what happened last year in terms of precipitation across the region, especially the Carolinas. This is just remarkable to me to see and let me scroll up just a little so you can see the title of this map. So this is 2020 annual departure from normal precipitation. So breaking that down, it's basically just, taking the annual precipitation totals and then calculating, how far away from the average for a particular location was that precipitation total. And so we can do that. And this is a gridded product. So we do that for each grid box. And so it's just astounding to see such a large area coverage across the Carolinas that are anywhere from 12 to more than 20 inches above normal for the year. And that's, much of the Western Carolinas, but even central and eastern parts of the state saw some pretty significant anomalies as well. And that has to do with the remarkable tropical cyclone season that we saw. Not exclusively, we also saw just a busy year of typical synoptic weather systems. But certainly the tropical cyclones just added to the wet misery for a lot of people, including farmers in particular. So if we take a look at a different look at this, this is the climate perspectives look. And again, this is showing annual precipitation rankings for each of those stations that we talked about earlier for temperature. And you can see, this whole lights up like a Christmas tree with all these green boxes indicating, wetter than average conditions across much of the Carolinas. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of get a better sense of the region. And places like Hickory, near you, Scotty, and actually I think Morganton is one of the stations. They were at second wettest, 120 years at that station. Greensboro, the Triad, came in at number 2, just barely below their wettest year on record. Lumberton, number 1. So again, just a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s across this area.
Jordan,
yeah.
Could you flip it? Because I use this tool all the time. Could you flip it to the departures from normal and show the folks? I mean, there's some crazy numbers, especially for hickory. I think it's 30 plus inches.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, let's see, you have Morganton 27.2, but yeah, you're right. Hickory's even more at 34 inches above normal. So
where's that 169? Holy moly.
That strikes me.
You think that might be
might be an error.
QC error? Okay.
I think so. I think that is actually on accident showing the actual precipitation total rather than the departure. So that's just a glitch in the system there. Good.
Gotcha.
I'm glad you noticed that. I'll be sure to mention that. But yeah, the story is just extreme departures from normal across the region.
Jordan, looking at these averages and these anomalies, I mean, this is incredible. Of course, we're going to get into some of the tropical discussion, which we know contributed to this. But before we get there, I want to just talk about some of the negative impacts from this amount of rainfall for these record-setting rainfalls for some of these areas. We understand watershed effects, but maybe talk about that a little bit for our audience here. What sort of negative impacts do we get from this much rain? I mean, people think, oh, well, that's good, there's no drought. Well, there's also an impact on the other side of the scale with too much rain. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think probably one of the biggest impacts of having too much rain is for the agricultural industry. I think that, farmers really suffer from having too much water pooling and flooding their fields. That, this is really getting back into the fall and early winter season is when they're out in the fields trying to harvest their crops. And so, they're not able to get their heavy equipment out in these fields if they're flooded or the ground is overly saturated. So that's, that can be a huge factor for them trying to, get their crops in for harvesting. It also introduces a lot of disease issues. So you can get, things, all sorts of different, fungus and bacterial related diseases that develop on these late season crops. And so those are, two huge issues that I can think of off the top of my head that would be, significant impacts from the wetness.
And what sort of crops do you recall? Do you have any of that in your report as well as to what was affected specifically?
Yeah, a lot of the biggest impacts I saw were for the traditional row crops. So things like cotton, soybeans, corn, in the Carolinas, sweet potatoes were probably impacted. Peanuts, this getting a little outside the region, although South Carolina does specialize in peanut production as well. So a lot of your kind of farm to table, crops that you think of, those are the ones that really took a hit.
While we're on precip, maybe talk about some of the severe weather impacts that we saw.
So if we want to talk about severe weather, there were nearly 1,100 severe weather reports across the Carolinas during the year, which was, a pretty active year, really severe weather-wise for the Carolinas. We had anything from, lots of damaging thunderstorm wind reports. The vast majority of those 1,100 reports would be associated with thunderstorm winds. Two of the bigger thunderstorm wind events that I gathered for the report were on January 13th of 2020. We had a microburst in Sampson County, North Carolina, that damaged a school. It partially uplifted part of the wall of the school's gymnasium, causing it to collapse. And unfortunately, that resulted in 3 injuries. The wind speeds for this event were estimated at 85 miles per hour, so a very significant microburst. And then we also had damaging straight line winds and a associated gustnado, which is it's not strictly a tornado, but it's this large, or this rather this localized area of wind on the kind of the outskirts of the downburst from a thunderstorm that causes this kind of twisting motion that makes it look almost like a small tornado. But anyway, it was observed in Lancaster County, South Carolina, with highest estimated gust of 105 miles per hour. So very, very strong there. The largest hailstones that were observed during the year were teacup size. So this is about 3 inches in diameter. And we saw these in Darlington County, South Carolina on May 5th. So,
and Jordan,
yeah.
to get you, I want to kind of rewind back for our viewers. I know COVID kind of put everybody in a tailspin, but that severe weather that you were talking about in January, and then we had another outbreak in February, which produced a tornado just south of uptown Charlotte. It was a pretty big severe weather event, and I believe it was close to the highest tornado count for the state of South Carolina, I believe is what we were approaching for 2020.
Exactly right. Yeah, that was definitely one of the superlatives for the year. So we had 109 tornadoes confirmed across both North and South Carolina. 61 of those tornadoes were confirmed in South Carolina alone, making that the state's second highest annual count, just behind 2004, which observed 86 tornadoes. And the reason that year had so many was, again, another very busy tropical cyclone season. So, it's interesting that the two top years for tornado production in South Carolina happen to be two very active tropical cyclone years, which we know that tropical cyclones can also produce tornadoes as well. So thought that was an interesting nugget.
And Jordan, talking about, I know this is Carolina based, but you were looking at all of the Southeast. There's been a lot of talk and data. We know the tornado alley in the plains. We know there's a tornado alley in the deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and then kind of Carolina alley, which is central eastern North Carolina and central and eastern South Carolina. But how did the Southeast overall rank in severe weather reports? I think it was a pretty down year for the plains. In fact, I think there's places in Kansas that didn't even see a tornado watch for the 2020 season. So how did the Southeast kind of fare in the severe weather season?
Yeah, it was a relatively quiet year in the plains, but in contrast, it was a very busy year across much of the Southeast. It was, kind of a dipole pattern, if you think about it that way. Busy in the Southeast, quiet in the plains. I think, if memory serves me right, that the Southeast as a whole registered its sixth greatest tornado count with records going back to 1950. So pretty active year for tornadoes. I think we had 299 tornadoes confirmed across the region. So just off of 300. So yeah, what we saw in the Carolinas was very much emblematic of what we saw across the larger Southeast.
And kind of tease at that, for those who are watching, we're going to have a show later on this year with some of the National Weather Services in South Carolina with Greer, Columbia, and Charleston, kind of talking about the 2020 tornado season. And I know Shay's been working with some folks, as have I, in the Weather Service in Greenville, Spartanburg. So we're looking forward to that show and just kind of the stuff they've been going through dealing with these tornadoes. So Shay, I know the big story out of everything is the tropics, and so I'm going to give it to our tropic guy to ask the tropic questions.
Sure. So one quick correction. I just looked up the day. It was actually 114 miles an hour, not 105. I was thinking of another from Hurricane Isaias, or Icy Isis, whatever you. It's funny how that name got construed that way, but either way, Myrtle Beach, that was pretty strong stuff. But leading into the tropics, Jordan, I mean, we all watched as a grueling season unfolded, especially for the Gulf, Louisiana in particular. We saw how powerful the Caribbean could be, but the ultimate result is these systems in the Gulf ultimately come up and they affect the Southeast region, especially the higher terrain in the mountains, right? Because as they sweep up and around the Bermuda High, we saw time and time again systematic dumps of rain and severe weather over and over again. So tell us, I mean, we got a third of the way through the Greek alphabet. I'm not going to go to every single storm here, obviously, but what's your take on how the tropics affected the Southeast region?
Yeah, they certainly had a tremendous impact on the weather and climate of 2020 for the Southeast. And so as I went back and kind of looked over the season as a whole, I found that 9 tropical cyclones had at least some small, at least a minimal impact on the Carolinas during the year, bringing, high winds, heavy rain, inland flooding, storm surge, and even tornadoes to the Carolinas. And so, I wish we could have a whole show dedicated to the tropical cyclone season for the Carolinas, but I won't go through every single one, but I wanted to bring out, a couple of the big players for the region. So as you just mentioned, Shay, Hurricane Isaias was one of the bigger storm impacts during the year, making landfall near Ocean Isle Beach back on August 3rd with peak sustained winds of 85 miles per hour and a maximum wind gust that was measured at Federal Point, North Carolina of 99 miles per hour. So very impressive there. Unfortunately, we saw some storm surge impacts, 8.5 to 9.5 feet. Unfortunately destroyed a lot of sand dunes and some sea turtle nests in Oak Island, North Carolina. One of the biggest stories of Isaias was the tornado outbreak that accompanied it. We had a total of 22 tornadoes spawned by that storm, including a rare EF3 tornado that caused 2 fatalities and 14 injuries in Bertie County, North Carolina on the 4th of August. So Isaias was definitely one of the big primetime storms during August, near the peak of the season that had a significant impact. But I think another one that's definitely worth mentioning is Tropical Storm Eta, which came later in the season on November 11th and 12th. We saw an interaction of Eta with an approaching cold front that basically wringed out a lot of tropical moisture across the Carolinas. We saw anywhere from 3 to more than 8 inches of rainfall across portions of the area. And one of the more significant spots was the Rocky Mount Wilson area of eastern North Carolina. They saw a 2-day total of 9.84 inches there at the regional airport. They also recorded their second wettest day for any month on record. It's a short period of record, only going back to 2000, but nonetheless, very significant rainfall. Numerous roads were flooded across North Carolina, including the closure of I-95 across near Wilson, North Carolina. Dozens of swiftwater rescues, and we saw one of the more iconic impacts of any of the storms during the year was the flooding at a campground in Alexander County, North Carolina, where we had 5 flood-related fatalities. They were trapped by the floodwaters and unable to escape, unfortunately. So, those, I think Eta and Isaias, along with, the other 7 that impacted the region, those were kind of the 2 headliners in my estimation.
Wow, just incredible. And so now we have a situation where, the rain hasn't let up. We still have, overabundance of precip, the soil content saturated. And, here we go into 2021. And so, we're not totally sure about what 2021 is going to bring, but how much, in your opinion, in the Southeast region for some of these higher areas have experienced too much rain, how much does it take to start the flooding process again? I mean, do people need to be on guard for 2 inches of rain from here on out until further notice, or what's the opinion there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that there definitely needs to be a heightened awareness of river flooding going into the late winter and early spring months. That is really the time of the year in the Southeast where we see some of the more significant river flooding occur. As we get synoptic systems that drop a wide coverage of relatively moderate to heavy rainfall over a broad area, that can be very problematic for a watershed that's already saturated. I guess one possible encouraging aspect is, we're in this La Nina right now, although it hasn't really been behaving much like a La Nina. We're seeing a lot of troughing over the eastern U.S. with a lot of systems coming in from the Pacific and, dumping more rainfall across the southeast. And so typically in a La Nina, you'd expect to see warmer and relatively drier conditions, but we can certainly still hope for that. But the pattern that we've been locked into lately has not really resembled what we typically see with a La Nina. So I think that we do need to be careful of river flooding heading out over the next couple of weeks.
And so, Jordan, talking about all the rain and the tropical activity, pretty much means we didn't really have a drought this year. But some of your research I found really crazy. I'll let you share it, but we kind of broke a record too in the drought department.
Yeah, we did. There were records all over the place. And so, this is the first time that North Carolina has remained drought-free during an entire year since 2014. And it's the first time South Carolina has remained drought-free during an entire year since the beginning of the U.S. Drought Monitor in 2000. So, basically looking all the way back through the available period of record for the U.S. Drought Monitor, which, by the way, is a great product for tracking the drought conditions across the U.S. Basically, this is the first time we've seen South Carolina be completely drought-free for an entire year since 2000. So, the wetness again was, it was the headliner for 2020 without a doubt.
I think that's one record we'd like to continue to see is no drought for any portion of the Carolina. Droughts are never a good thing. So as we close up, folks want to kind of dive into this information a little bit more. I know you're showing the Klimper mat a little bit earlier. How can we access this? Where's the best place to view it at, Jordan?
Yeah, so this is the homepage for CERC.com, which is the Southeast Regional Climate Center's homepage. We've got a lot of links and moving maps here, as you can kind of see it scroll through on its own. Lots of different things, links over here on the right-hand side are different. Here's our quarterly report right here. Our annual report's located here. And our latest monthly report for December is located here at the top. And so that's where you can kind of access that. Another way to access it is just to go here to climate data and then monthly seasonal climate information. And once you do that, scroll to the bottom and you can you can basically choose from this drop-down menu all of our reports going back all the way back to 2017. We actually have them archived even further back than that if you're interested. So that's the home page. And by the way, the Climate Perspectives tool is also located under Climate Data as well. So that's kind of our website. And if you want to, if I can plug myself, follow me on Twitter at McWeather1989. So McWeather 1989. That's how you follow me on Twitter. Happy to talk about any of this in further detail.
Well, Jordan, we appreciate your time of sharing this. Hopefully the hot seat wasn't too bad. We'll be happy to have you back on this side of the table for our next show. But I appreciate all the information. Definitely go check out the website. I'd love using the map. I use it a lot throughout the year. It's a great way to get quick information and a lot of reporting stations around the Carolinas. So with that, we're going to, if I had paper here, we'd throw 2020 away in the trash can, and we'll look forward to hopefully a better 2021, at least in the weather department. Maybe not as many floods and severe weather and hurricane events, but if they are, we'll be here to cover them. So Jordan, once again, thank you, and thank everyone at the Southeast Regional Climate Center for all the hard work you all are doing. Tell everyone we said hello, and we appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next time here on the Carolina Weather Group.